welcome to Season 6, Episode 4 of the Sajin Photography Podcast. I am your host, Jason Teal, and it, again, has been a little while since we've had a chance to talk, and it's been so long, it is now 2026. But with that being said, let's look back at the year 2025 and all of its terrible, nasty glory, because it was a dumpster fire of a year, and it ended off kind of kicking me in the balls a little bit. I'm not happy with how it ended, but it was, well, we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's just start from the beginning. Now, as you know, I usually teach the photography classes at the Ulsan Support Center for Foreign Residents, and that has become sort of a yearly tradition, and it's been my anchor for most of the year. Basically because it is a great class, it's honest work, and I love teaching the students. Now, to be honest, this year has been remarkably amazing, and we had such a blast. It was a smaller class as compared to the previous 2 years, but again, this meant that I had more time to focus individually on the students. And, we had no surprises this year. I think I mentioned last year we had some dude come into our classroom and try and, I don't know, like just take over the class. And I don't really know what was going on with that still, but it was just one of those things. But this year we had no weird surprises, nothing, no drama, nothing. And it was actually honestly really good because it all, finished off into a very, very smooth running gallery exhibition. Now, if you're wondering what I sort of mean by that, the entire year I sort of anchor the year with the gallery being the culmination of all of the students' learning. And it sort of is like their final exam. After all, I've got a master's in education, so you understand where I'm sort of pulling this from. And it all went so well. Like, I can't even explain how stress-free the organizing and the setup of the gallery was. Our printer was a new guy this year, and he did a remarkable job. And by all means, like, it was just such a relief as compared to previous years. Also, too, like, working with the city, there was no drama, no behind the scenes BS. It was all just a smooth class from start to finish. And that really gave me sort of a lot of just relaxation and time to be able to focus in on the students, helping them improve, watching them make mistakes, guiding them through the process. Because here's the thing, like with these classes, I'm not up there trying to flex that I am the best photographer that has ever walked the earth. And really, I'm not. But what I am is trying to be a teacher. And now, before you give me that adage of, those who can't do teach, this is not one of those things. This is more like a mentorship or coaching. My students this year already knew how to work their cameras, some of them extremely well. Others were transitioning from crappy camera to better camera. And the thing is that I'm not up there trying to flex how amazing my photos are. And actually, I actively try and, not kind of show my students how awesome my photos are. I don't think I have those. What I'm trying to show them is where I get the inspiration from, how to set up these shots, and how to get their own awesome shots. And over this past year, that's exactly how I set up this class and watch the students sort of, now let me pull out a very cheesy phrase, blossom into amazing photographers. But you get what I'm saying. Like it was great watching them develop. Ooh, there's a good pun for you. Now, with that being done, it took basically most of the year. We finished off in November with our gallery exhibition. There was the interviews on TV. It was a pretty crazy time, because on top of that, I was working with the city of Seoul, and you may have seen a lot of pictures of that big city pop up, and I'll explain what I was doing, why I was there, and all of that good stuff in just a moment. If you've been reading my blog, you probably have read about my numerous trips over the past year up to the great city of Seoul. And if you're wondering why, or if you just simply don't know or haven't read those, basically what had happened was, and this is kind of a good story, at the beginning of the year, I was contacted by a contact that I have not heard from in years. And it was one of those things where it's like, Jason, do you remember me? We worked together when I interviewed you for this magazine. And this was like, way back in the day. So I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, my friend has a job that we think that you'd be perfect for, blah, blah, blah. So I set this up and I talked to their friend. And basically, what it was once a month, I would go up to Seoul and do an article and then take some pictures and get paid. That was the basic premise of what I was doing. What this eventually evolved into was making proposals, 2 proposals every month. They would select them on the parameters they wanted, experiential stuff. And over the year, it was kind of stressful at times because they really, the first assignment we went back and forth on, they wanted me to go up to Seoul and follow the path of I think it was like the office workers drinking party, that sort of thing. And I said, yeah, that's good, except I don't drink. And I told you that I can only go up on the weekends because I work. And it was in Yoedo, which is basically empty on the weekends, and especially on Sundays when I could really only go up. So it was a lot of, proposal writing, just really racking my brain. And then sometimes they would throw me a curveball where I'd spend, about a week doing these proposals. And then I'd say, like, Jason, have you seen the movie K-pop Demon Hunters? Yeah. Could you just scrap what you just wrote us and track down all of the locations for K-pop Demon Hunters? And, this may sound easy, but here is the thing. As photographers, as people who live in Korea or outside of Korea, you probably know this. Weather, people, those factors are extremely challenging to work around. And the K-pop Demon Hunters article came out and it was decent. I got lucky. But also I had a really challenging experience with one of the shots because simply they wanted the shot in the movie where they're fighting the monsters on top of the subway car. Now that's coming across the Toksum Park along the Han River. And by the time I got there, it started to kind of rain. So the sky was that milky white color that most of Korea has during the summer season. It was blah, but I was there and I had to come up with something. So that was the stressful part. Other times it was where you're shooting and just people are assholes. I went into a market, I was photographing another scene, and one of the baristas chased me down through the market and demanded that I delete her pictures. Did I even see her in the shots? Nope. But, she obviously saw me. So, yeah, being the photographer that I was, I deleted the shots. Another cafe, I was photographing the barista making the coffee. And some other, I think it was just a customer, in Korean said, it's like, hey, it's pretty rude to photograph somebody without their permission or something like that. And even the barista was like, yeah, and this sort of thing where, it's a busy cafe, I'm just getting shots. Yeah, maybe I should have, stopped the barista mid pour and said like, hey, by the way, can I get a photograph of you? It's especially when it's like not his face and stuff like that. It was pretty difficult to work around these sort of situations. And I learned a lot, like I kind of nodded and, excused myself and apologized in that situation. But it was still like people were immediately on the offensive in Seoul as opposed to any other places I've been to where most people wouldn't have cared. Most people would have been happy. But here it was immediately people were pretty aggressive, pretty angry. And after those sort of situations, you sort of learn to sort of work around and find ways to ask permission without being so intrusive and all of that. But it is a real challenge, but I did get to know the city of Seoul. I did get to a lot of the highlights of the city itself, a lot of the touristy areas, and I walked a lot. And some of the high points, I got to go on the night tour of Cheondeokgung and go through all of that. During that time, again, I guess maybe it's my barista background, maybe, but I ended up talking with another barista at sort of like a traditional cafe kind of place, and they were from Ulsan, where I am. So we had a good conversation, and again, you know, different area, and they totally allowed me to photograph and all of that. They weren't aggressive or angry or anything like that. And the big thing I pulled out of all of this, and I'll dispense upon you with kind of some tips. Number one, yes, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who you're photographing. People are not going to like your camera. And I'm not just talking about shoving it in your face, but I mean, if they feel uncomfortable being in your perspective, in the angle of which you are shooting, just don't start a fight. Just delete the images. People are going to want to be, I guess you could say, their privacy, and if they feel that you violated it, regardless of how stupid it is, if someone's walking across the street and you're taking a picture of it, you get what I'm saying. Number two, carry business cards or introduce yourself first before you shoot, and that may get you a nod, or it also may get you not kicked out, but with the thing of the Cheondeokgung, they were more cautious of my tripod and whatnot, and I should have just winged it and nobody would have said anything. Now, after all of that travel up to Seoul and back, it made for some really long days. I can't even explain to you how many weeks I've had where I would work Monday to Friday at my job in Gyeongju, come home, pack, and get up at like 4:30 in the morning to catch the first train up to Seoul, work all weekend, come back, collapse, upload my photos to Lightroom, pass out, and then work another full week. And also in between those times, do my photography classes. And it was a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It was not a happy, awesome side hustle, bro kind of fist bump kind of thing. It was tiring. My feet were sore and smelling like hot garbage. It was insane, especially in the summer months. Like, I cannot tell you how hard some of the days were. Like, I remember finishing my work, coming home, editing and prepping for my photography class, doing the photography class, doing some family stuff, coming home, dropping the wife off, getting on the bus, going, and basically it was an all weekend event, and then you still have to come and work on Monday. So it was a long time, but throughout that, I did take some vacations, and strangely enough, 3 times this past year, I made it to Fukuoka, Japan, one of my favorite places, I think, in the entire world. And the reason is that if you don't know, if you're not from this area, Fukuoka is like an hour flight from Busan. So the bus to the airport probably takes longer than the actual flight into another country. What I love about Fukuoka as a city is it's laid back. It has everything that you would need, and it's just a beautiful place. And by everything that you need, let's give you 2 perspectives. One, as a photographer, they have big camera. They have Yodobashi camera. They have temples. They have seaside. They have buildings, canals, everything within a small little area. And that's why I like it. From a travel perspective, here's the other side. You fly into Fukuoka Airport, and they have the best sort of acronym. There's ICN, there's YVR, but Fukuoka's airport is FUK, F-U-K. So you fly into FUK. Within about 10 minutes, one basic, you take the shuttle bus to the domestic airport, go downstairs. 2 stops later, you're at Hakata Station. That's where the Yodobashi camera is. That's also where I'd recommend in that area to get a hotel. Why? There's Zen Buddhist temples. There's shopping. There's everything that you need is in that sort of Hakata area. There's also Don Quixote and all of that kind of thing. If you want shopping, then you go about, a few more stops down, but maybe like at most 10 minutes, and you're in sort of the Tenjin shopping area. Jump on the other line, take it down, and you've got the beach side. There's tons of stuff there. So I was lucky enough to visit there 3 times this year, twice with my wife, and it was absolutely amazing. The first time was more of a photography trip. I just ground out all the shots that I want to get over the years, reshot some of the old ones, and it was absolutely fantastic. Just a perfect weekend getaway. Now, the letdown last year was I really wanted to go to the big celebration in Fukuoka, which is the Yamakasa, but I feel that this year is the year for it. So I'm going to do that. I've have enough seniority now to sort of be able to take a day off when the Yamakasa festival is on, fly over and check that off my bucket list. If you get a chance, people, please don't overlook Fukuoka simply because it's not Osaka or Tokyo. It is a great place to visit. Now, getting to that dumpster fire, we had some ups and downs this year. And starting off, one of the things was basically work. I took a job with a recruiting company to work at the big nuclear and power company here in Korea. And the biggest jolt, but there was a silver lining in it, was the fact that I got hired. They sent me up to Seoul. So you saw some of the pictures that I got of the cityscapes back in February. And yeah, during that time, they told me I didn't, in fact, have a job. And there was some panicking, some very curt phone calls. And luckily enough, they rescheduled, or I don't know what they did, but I got a job out in Gyeongju. That's where I'm working now. And it was probably the best choice. I love the crew of people I'm working with. And also, it's just fantastic being right next to Bulguksa Temple and all of that. The second biggest issue we had was my father-in-law, my wife's father, passed away back in August. And that was kind of a shock. It really shook us to the core. And there was just simply just a sad time. And I thought maybe, yeah, we could get, through all of it without anything else bad happening. And then I was really looking forward to having an amazing Christmas. I was geared up. I was excited. I was revved up. I remember going into work, blasting Christmas music to the point where, my coworkers are like, okay, tone it down a little bit, Santa. And I was like, okay. And then the very next day I got the call, my brother passed away, and it was not an expected thing. It was just tragic. And it was one of those things where you beg, for something, some sort of silver lining to come out of it, where, you want that Christmas movie thing where, like the Hallmark thing where the photographer comes back to his hometown from Korea. Through all of this, he inherits $1 billion and, is able to help his mother and blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that happens. Loss has a way of just taking from you, slapping you in the face, knocking you down, and just pissing on you while you're struggling to get up. And that's sort of what the year finished like. It was quiet moments, trying to piece together what the future is going to look like. Anxiety, where you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, that sort of thing. And it's not a nice thing that, you want to sit with for a while, but it's the other problem is that this is life now. This will happen to you at some point. You will go through that. You will sit in those offices and have to have those conversations and pay those bills, and then have those quiet drives home where you're desperately trying to come up with a topic of conversation that doesn't relate back to the scary reality that you just, went through. And the words just don't matter and they don't come to you. The weather doesn't seem like weather anymore. It's just a topic that you're trying to throw out there just to trick your brain. It doesn't work. And that's basically how I spent December. It was nice to be back home. It was nice to see people I hadn't seen in years, but it was also the reality of, half my family now is gone. And there was no Christmas miracle. There was no Hallmark movie moment. It was me and my mom sitting alone in our house at the kitchen table, eating Christmas dinner, quietly remembering the good times. But that's what life is like at times. And now I'm back. It's 2026, and I'm looking ahead to the future, and I'm hoping that this year is going to be better. I'm trying to improve my photography at least a little bit better, studying, because I think like there's never going to be a point where you shouldn't be studying. And I don't give a shit if you're an influencer or you think you're somebody amazing. You should always be studying the craft, always improving. And that's what I'm trying to do. It will make me a better teacher for my students should I get the contract again. It will make me a better storyteller for the city of Seoul should I get that contract again. And overall, I just want to be a better photographer. So my advice is to you, take these moments that you have now, these happy moments, and try and translate them through your camera. Show people the beauty that you see or what's left in the world and just photograph it. Don't fall into this bullshit of competitive, toxic gatekeeping or anything like that. Just do the craft, go through and find what voice you're trying to show people with your camera. And for those that have continued to listen and continue to support this podcast, let me thank you for always being there through the ups and the downs. And I apologize for not being able to put out a lot of content last year. It was a tough fucking year. And I'm hoping that with the mindset I've got right now, that I can get through this all and give you guys more content, whether it be here on the podcast, on my website, or anywhere else that you see my photos. But with that being said, I just want to thank you all for supporting me, continuing to support me, and I wish you all the best in 2026. Let's all make this a great year to be photographers, and let's do our best. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.